Well, a good weekend to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended weekend forecast. Have a few things to cover for our weather as we head throughout the weekend, and we'll break down your event-specific forecast, but also we have to talk a good amount of tropics because that's going to pertain to your forecast as we head into the beginning of next week. First things first, Thursday actually saw our fair share of rainfall here across Central Georgia. Finally, the first day that we've had widespread rain, at least in the month of September. Now, most areas, especially the farther east that you live, probably only saw about a couple tenths of an inch of rain. But the farther west that you go, you're starting to see some greens and some yellows. We had some localized areas that got upwards to about an inch or two of rain across some areas in Central Georgia. So let's break down some of those piece by piece. Some of these green areas just above the 1 inch mark, about 1.3 inches of rain around Round Oak in North Jones County. Just north of Forsyth off I-75, nearly 3 inches of rain, nearly 2 inches of rain down here in northern Crawford County. And one of the highest totals we actually see here in Central Georgia, going to be 4 inches just to the northwest of downtown Thomaston. Continuing to take it over towards the west, so you can see the areas towards the west and the northwest definitely got more rain than areas farther over to the east and southeast. Just shy of 2 inches of rain outside of Perry, going over to the same number right there in downtown Butler, 1.3 inches into western Dooley County, 1 inch of rain around Lake Blackshear, and the highest total was right outside of Central Georgia, nearly 6 inches of rain right there on the county line of Sly County and Sumter County between Ellaville and Americus. That would definitely be very beneficial, but that's getting to the point where you do get a little bit too much rain at one time. But all in all, we'll be thankful for whatever we got, because Thursday, was the most rain that we've seen in one day measured in the entire month of September. Now, our total this month still very minuscule, only about 3/10 of an inch of rain, and most of that did fall on September 25th, which was 0.24 inches of rain. So you can see we're still well below average, and we're still nowhere near that record set back in 2004. So obviously the rain was a welcome sight, but it's probably not going to do too much in terms of alleviating some of these dry conditions that have settled in. Here's a look at your drought monitor that shows all of Central Georgia got expanded into at least an abnormally dry conditions. Now, this was taken as of this past Thursday. We'll typically get an update to these drought monitors every week. So every Thursday around 8 to 9 a.m. we'll be on the lookout for that. And we can see some areas of moderate drought expanding into west central Georgia. Now, the very good thing is west central Georgia did see their fair share of rain this past Thursday. So hopefully that did a good number for alleviating some of these moderate drought conditions that are spanning into portions of Upson County, really close over here to Taylor County. And then we see a pocket of a severe drought right there along the Alabama and Georgia state line. Once again, that's an area that saw its fair share of rain yesterday. So we'll continue to try to add to some of the totals that we've seen so far, but we'll have to talk about what Future View has to say about that coming up. So for the almanac that we did have on Thursday, right on par with your average high temperature sitting at 86 degrees. I wanted to show this just for the purpose of your year departure of rain. We actually finally got a bit of an uptick in this number. It has just continued to go down and down and down through the entire month of September. So what that means, that year departure of rain is where we are in terms of our rainfall in the whole year of 2025 compared to where we are on this date averagely in all the years that we've since been taking records. So that's back since the late 1800s, and still due to a very wet August and a very wet May and June in central Georgia, we have continued to hover above average, nearly 4.5 inches above where we should be at this point of the calendar year. But now let's go into Future View. Let's plan out your weekend as we progress through your Friday afternoon. Still holding on to a few scattered shower chances, maybe even a spotty storm or two. Mostly cloudy skies are going to do a great deal of keeping the high temperature at bay. And then we progress into the evening hours. So 7 p.m., right around when a lot of football games are starting in central Georgia. Still holding on to a few light shower chances and that cloudy atmosphere. But overall, as we progress into the nighttime hours, I think your rain chances are decreasing, not completely going away. So you're still going to want to have the rain gear readily available as you go out to football games or any other Friday evening plans with friends and family. Before we transition into a mostly dry start to your Saturday morning, still plenty of that cloud cover in the picture. Not necessarily a bad thing. That will still do a good job of inhibiting the warm up throughout the first couple hours throughout the day. But as you can see, as we progress through into your Saturday afternoon, cloud cover begins to clear, and we do have a couple spotty shower chances, but the rain chances the last couple of model runs have definitely backed off from what we were originally seeing on Saturday. Not going to be a bad thing whatsoever. Hopefully we can dodge the rain, get some sunshine in the forecast, and your high temperatures are not forecasted to be as warm as the last couple of days that we had during the work week. We even hit 95 degrees this past Wednesday, so very thankful to have some high temperatures back into the 80s. And then very similar to what we see for Friday night. As the sun does begin to set, the temperatures begin to cool down and your rain chances decrease. Not completely go away. You can see a couple of small light green dots that still linger in the picture each and every morning. That will once again be the case as we go into Sunday morning. Then we progress into Sunday afternoon. Almost looks completely dry here in central Georgia, but still a few spotty showers that could try to make their way down from the north and the northeast. And that will take us all the way into Sunday night, where we look to end the weekend on a dry note. So let's take a look at your football Friday night forecast. Temperatures in the 70s. Yes, that is going to be a welcome sight. Our high temperature is only forecasted a few degrees above 79 degrees throughout today, but mostly cloudy skies, maybe still the chance of an isolated shower or a low-end thunderstorm. So grab the rain gear just in case you encounter any of that rain, and keep it handy as you are going out into the stadium, sitting down in the bleachers. Your rain chances are decreasing, but like I said, not completely going away. There's a higher likelihood of you dodging the rain as opposed to receiving anything in the way of rain, but you want to be prepared. Better to be safe than sorry when it does come to some of these scattered and isolated rain chances. As you progress into final score, conditions get a little bit clearer and they'll continue to get cooler. How about 72 degrees as we wrap up final score? That is going to be some pleasant feeling temperatures. So next 3 days, as we progress into Saturday, your rain chances start to go down. More sunshine will be present as we go into Saturday afternoon and along with that Sunday afternoon. So you will see your high temperatures bounce back into the mid 80s. And as we get the cloud cover to hopefully get out of the picture for the morning hours, we should see a slight downtick in those morning low temperature numbers. Still a little bit above average, but anytime you're feeling like the 60s in the morning hours, it is definitely going to be a win and some very pleasant light conditions. So as we take the latest graph model run over the next couple of days all through the weekend, you can see a couple areas add maybe a few tenths of an inch of rain to the totals that they've already seen as of this past Thursday. And we still have the potential for some isolated spots that could get close to about an inch of rain. You're going to be very, very lucky if you do see that. Overall, I think there's not much rain that's going to be added on to the totals that we've already seen. So not much more alleviation for the dry conditions that we do have. But now let's talk about Saturday, because it is a big day in Athens, Georgia, the entire state of Georgia, for Georgia fans all over the southeast, the country, and as a matter of fact, all over the world. Squaring off against, yes, that rival Alabama, number 17 Alabama, one of the lowest rankings I think I've seen Alabama have as of recently. But not to take away from the fact we still need to cover your forecast if you're going up to Athens to watch the spectacular game. It will have a 7:30 kickoff, so 7:30 on ABC. We're going to have a night game up in Sanford Stadium. The good news is, just like I was talking about with your forecast for football Friday night, your rain chances will decrease as we get closer and closer to kickoff. And then as you're heading home sometime around 11 p.m., maybe more closer to the midnight hour or 1 a.m. if it runs like the Georgia Tech game did last year and goes 8 overtimes. But 81 for our temperature right there when you're around tailgate time. It's still the chance of a couple spotty showers or two, but I really think the rain chances will get out of the picture for kickoff and then eventually into the second half of the game. Even temperatures down into the upper 60s as you're wrapping up the game. So weekend grillcast, I still think it's going to be good each and every evening in order for your grillcast. Maybe express a little bit of caution, but overall, most of you are probably not going to see any rain over the course of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evening. So I do think it's green spatulas to go. No need to order in whatsoever. But Friday, September 26th, it does mark a big benchmark in terms of those hours of daylight. So if you've been keeping up with the sunrise and sunset times, well, Friday, September 26th is actually going to mark the first day that the nights are going to be longer than the days. So our hours of daylight have gone just below 12 hours at 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 45 seconds. So yes, 15 more seconds of nighttime as opposed to daylight. But overall, we'll just continue to see that number decrease as we head into the fall season and eventually to the first day of winter. So let's talk about a couple important dates. October 15th, not really a date for anything necessarily important. We kick-started the fall season this past Monday. Hasn't necessarily felt like fall whatsoever, but as we just go halfway into the month of October, the big important thing with this is it will be our last 7 p.m. sunset. So after October 15th, the sun will begin to set before the 7 p.m. hour, marking just under 11 and a half hours of daylight. And then November 2nd, that's going to be when daylight saving time ends, so we're going to fall back. I believe you're going to gain an extra hour of sleep, which I am absolutely so enthralled about. And I'm also very, very excited about the sunset time, because many of you are probably not going to like this, but 5:42 p.m. is going to be the time that the sun sets on November 2nd. So yes, it would typically be 6:42, but since we fall back, of course, that sunset is going to get a bit earlier, but in turn, the sun is going to rise once again before the 7 a.m. hour, but the window of daylight does continue to get a little bit slimmer, just under 11 hours of daylight at 10 hours and 48 minutes. Now, December 21st, that will be the first day of winter. The winter solstice does mark our shortest day in terms of hours of daylight. Sunrise at 7:33 in the morning, sunset just past 5:30 in the afternoon. That is going to mark just under 10 hours of daylight for the first day of winter. So you typically know it when it starts to get cooler and colder outside. That's when we start to have some shorter periods of daylight as we transition into the very end of the calendar year. But I, for one, am so thrilled about these earlier sunsets because I have an earlier bedtime myself. If it's already dark, say about 6:30, it makes it a lot easier for me to fall asleep and get up dark and early with you each and every morning. So now going into the long-range future view models, we'll go over what we're seeing as of right now, but then we'll go more in depth about the tropics breakdown coming up in just a moment. You will see not the best agreement, but you do see a little bit better agreement than what we have been seeing over the last couple of days, that a potential tropical system is looking to move onshore across portions of coastal South Carolina and North Carolina. Lots and lots of tropical moisture. But right now, the European model here in blue, not necessarily hinting at a potential movement inland from this tropical system. The GFS is continuing to send this actually up into North Carolina, portions of Virginia and Tennessee. And as we progress into the end of Tuesday, so that's going to be Tuesday night right here, this system still meandering out in the Atlantic Ocean just off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina, according to the Euro. That tropical moisture continues to get a lot more disorganized as we go the GFS route here. So the important thing to note is we are going to be eyeing the tropics as we go into the beginning of the work week next week. And like I said, we'll talk about more of the possible scenarios as we go into the near future. You can see lots and lots of green shades, lots and lots of blue shades that still meander in the picture as we go well into the work week next week. In fact, if we go either of these scenarios or either of these routes, it looks like tropical moisture could be hanging around for a couple of days and sending us some much needed rain chances, which would be a welcome thing. But like I said, you don't want to dump too much rain at one time. So we're going to continue to keep a close eye on that as we go across the course of this weekend, but we'll have more on that coming up in just a second. Your morning low temperatures, as of right now, they are forecasted to steadily decrease. Now, if we see more tropical moisture in the forecast, we see more cloud cover as we walk out the door each and every morning, a lot of these numbers are probably going to be a bit warmer than what I have currently forecasted. But obviously, as you go into Wednesday and Thursday next week, those are two important dates. Wednesday will be the first day of October, and then the first day of the Georgia National Fair will be kicking off on October 2nd. So as of right now, your afternoon high temperatures still not forecasted above average by any means, but we are going to continue to maybe see a decline in those high temperatures as we go into the midweek next week. Thursday is the first day I've forecasted with a high of in the 70s, which would definitely give you more of a fall feel, but that also could be contributed to more widespread cloud cover and some rain chances. That's not the kind of 77 that we do want as we are searching for that fall feel in the air. So going past that window, October 3rd, so that will be next Friday all the way through the following Thursday, which is October 9th. It does look like we have a slight probability of some above average temperatures, which would just mean some temperatures probably in the mid 80s, maybe into the low 80s. By the time we get to this time period, I imagine your high temperature or the average high temperature is going to be somewhere around 82 degrees, maybe 83 degrees, just depending on what day it is. And then as we continue for that same outlook, but in terms of precipitation, we also have a slight probability of seeing some above average precipitation Hopefully that can come to fruition. We can definitely get some better rain chances in the forecast to usher out all of these abnormally dry or moderate drought conditions that have settled into not only central Georgia, but many areas down in the south and the southeast. So looking ahead, the first day of October, that will be in 5 days as of this past Friday. So of course, if you're watching this Saturday, you're watching this Sunday, it will be on 4 days if you're watching on Saturday, and then 3 days if you're watching on Sunday. Start of the fair is going to be 1 day after that first day of October. So we're kicking off the Georgia National Fair on October 2nd, and it's going to go all the way until October 12th. Then Halloween, 35 days away, just over a month until we are celebrating kind of that first holiday towards the end of the year that really sends us into the holiday season. And then, of course, not necessarily a holiday, but an important day for many. It is Election Day. So heading out to cast your ballot in whatever local races that you have, maybe even some national races that we still do have on the ballot. That will be happening 4 days after Halloween, which will be in 39 days, and I believe it is specifically on November 4th. So a couple things that we're looking forward to. I did mention to you that this past Monday was the official start of fall. It most certainly did not feel like it. 3 days in a row for the first 3 days of fall that we hit a high temperature somewhere in the 90s, even 95 this past Wednesday with feels like numbers near the triple-digit mark. So we were really holding on to that summertime heat for as long as we possibly could. Still going to take some time to get some of those cooler fall-like temperatures in the forecast, and along with that, when we start to see those leaves change color. So if you do know anyone up in North Georgia, or you have any plans throughout the month of October, late October is going to be when we see that peak fall foliage, meaning all those bright yellows and oranges and red colors of the leaves. That's going to happen in the North Georgia mountains, first and foremost in the entire state of Georgia. As you progress down into the Piedmont region of the state, Metro Atlanta, getting up into Athens, you'll start to see that peak fall foliage sometime in early November. And then here in central Georgia, it looks like it's going to be mid-November before we really start to see a lot of those leaves change. And then down in South Georgia, getting over towards coastal Georgia, you'll start to see the peak fall foliage in late November. And then past that, you start to get down into Florida, coastal areas where there's not too much vegetation in nature, or you just have a lot of evergreen trees. So they typically see little to no peak fall foliage, which I do feel sorry for them. Obviously, it is such a beautiful sight to see, and obviously it does mark the beginning of a cooler time of the year. So now let's talk some tropics. As of 8 a.m. this past Friday, we are still continuing to monitor this potential area of development. 80% chance of developing over the next 48 hours, 90% chance of developing past that window. I do believe that this will be our next named storm by the time we get into the end of Friday all the way into early Saturday at the very latest. Right now, it's a good cluster of disorganized showers and thunderstorms in between Hispaniola and Cuba, trying to move up towards the north into this warm water that sits around Turks and Caicos and the southern Bahamas. But also, it's not the only storm that we do have out there. We also have Hurricane Umberto, which did form as of yesterday into Tropical Storm Umberto, and as of early on Friday morning, it strengthened up into a Category 1 storm. Well, Umberto does continue to strengthen. 90-mile-per-hour winds, central pressure of 979 millibars, but not moving at a very fast clip like we've seen many of our tropical systems lately, only moving to the northwest at about 5 miles per hour. So it's going to continue to slowly kick into gear. But the latest trends that we continue to see is Umberto is going to continue to move over to the west and the northwest. It will continue to strengthen by Saturday morning, forecasted to have 120-mile-per-hour winds. And the highest that we do see on this timestamp, Sunday evening, 145-mile-per-hour winds. That's definitely getting up into high-end Category 4 status, really starting to flirt with that Category 5 status, which it would be the first Category 5 storm I do believe that we've seen in the Atlantic hurricane season so far. Hurricane Aaron might have briefly gotten that criteria, but all of this to say, Hurricane Umberto is something we are continuing to closely monitor, but the good news is as we continue to see this cone extend out into the future, we continue to see a shift up to the north and eventually back out into the east, a very similar path as to what we've seen with many systems so far. That goes for Hurricane Gabrielle, Hurricane Aaron, and Hurricane Fernan. All those systems kind of brushed up or acted like they were going to brush up along the east coast of the United States and then curve back out to sea. Obviously not going to be the best forecast over in Bermuda, so if you have any plans for upcoming fall break cruises that are possibly heading over there, this is something you need to keep a very close eye on. But Umberto does stand as a high-end Category 1 as of right now. But over here to the west, you can see that this potential tropical system that we're monitoring is not too far away. So both of these systems are in the near vicinity of one another, so it could result in a variety of tropical scenarios. So we have Umberto and we have Invest 94L, which is that area I was just telling you about with high chances of development. For the sake of this, we're going to refer to Invest 94L as Future Imelda because that's going to be our next named storm, and it's looking more and more likely that Imelda is going to form over the course of the next 24 hours as of Friday. So scenario 1, the storms stay far away from one another, resulting in Future Imelda possibly making a landfall in the Carolinas. Now, as of recently, I would say scenario 1 probably has a greater likelihood than scenario 2 or 3 from happening, and you did just get a good look at the long-range future view model runs. But scenario 2 would be Umberto pulls Future Imelda away from the U.S. coast, and it could possibly even lead to the merging of two storms, which would allow for a stronger storm to form, but this would be a good scenario because it would pull them away from the eastern U.S. and along with that, obviously away from central Georgia. Now, scenario 3 is something that we rarely see in the Atlantic Ocean. It's something called the Fujiwara effect. This is where two tropical systems can get close to one another, so they can start to rotate one another. So they would happen in this counterclockwise direction. If that were to happen, Umberto obviously forecasted to curve back out into the Atlantic, but if these systems start to influence the path of one another, this could pull Umberto a little bit closer over to the east coast of the United States. These systems would begin to rotate one another, but wouldn't necessarily merge like they would in scenario 2. And now looking at the latest model run data, we do even have a fourth scenario, which we'll talk a little bit more about when I show you the European model. But let's go ahead and kind of draw these pictures out. Here's scenario number 1, Future Imelda over here around Hispaniola and Umberto over here just to the northeast of the Caribbean. So as we progress day by day, we continue to see these two storms staying a good deal away from one another. Right now, as I'm looking back on it, I would put Future Imelda a little bit higher up than this. I think Imelda is going to move at a bit of a faster clip than Umberto is forecasted to. Well, if they stay far away from one another, their circulation is not going to influence the path of one storm or the other, and Future Imelda would continue to move up to the north, possibly even making a landfall around the coastal areas of the Carolinas, and obviously Macon, Georgia, not too far away from that. We would be in the near vicinity to receive some tropical moisture, some bands of rain, and along with that, some possible gusty winds. Scenario number 2 is where both these storms are still located where they originally are, but as you can see, they creep closer and closer to one another, and then this flow of Umberto starts to pull in Future Imelda. So what would happen with this, they would no longer be two named storms. There would be one larger storm that would still stay out at the Atlantic coast, but this would be a good case scenario because take a look at this. It would just result in this larger storm and this stronger storm to continue to move back out into the Atlantic Ocean, well away from the eastern United States. Now, scenario 3, that Fujiwara effect I was referring to, take a look at this. You can start to see Umberto go over the top of Future Imelda, and along with that, Imelda is going to continue to move over to the east of where the projected path is right now, which is going up towards South Carolina and North Carolina. This would push Umberto a little bit closer to the eastern coast of the United States. Not necessarily making a landfall, but Umberto is forecasted to be the stronger storm. So obviously this would still have some implications in terms of rip currents, maybe even some coastal flooding into areas of North Carolina and South Carolina. But I still do believe that these systems would try to stay both back out to sea, even if they do start to spin around one another during that Fujiwara effect. This would send Future Imelda back out into the Atlantic Ocean, and then Imelda would be the one possibly impacting Bermuda. Now that scenario is not very likely, but let's go ahead and talk about some of the other possible scenarios that we could see according to the spaghetti models. So as of recently, over the last couple of days of us looking at this here on the weather team, you can obviously see there is a lot of jumbled spaghetti right here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, meaning that there are some possible paths where we do see some of those situations and those scenarios play out that I was just depicting. But we can see a lot of the spaghetti plots clustered together. This is Imelda right here, so you can see there is a little bit more of a shift going towards the south and the southeast United States. Even some paths of some model runs that do have a potential path going in the near vicinity of central Georgia. And then you do see Umberto back over here. Good agreement that it's going to continue up to the north and the northwest and potentially take that curve up to the north and then back out into the northeast. So right now, I think this is going to be our main focus right now. Invest 94L, future Imelda, as we continue to see better model agreement, which we haven't seen too much of over the last couple of days. The better agreement the models come into, we can start to get a better picture about what's going to potentially happen. But I did mention a possible fourth scenario, and that would be this right here, according to what the European model does say. You can see a defined center of circulation right here, indicated by kind of some of this darker blue right here within the long-range European model run. This is Umberto, and future Imelda is definitely very disorganized, but it is moving a little bit faster than Umberto. This would be a scenario where Imelda just continues up to the north, and Umberto is really not influencing the path of it whatsoever. But take a look at what happens here. You can continue to see that this system goes up towards South Carolina and North Carolina, but it parks itself. It doesn't necessarily make a landfall. It may nudge itself a little bit farther inland, but if it meanders over the same area for quite a while, this could result in lots and lots of tropical moisture that continues to get dumped over the south and the southeast. That would have potential flooding concerns. Now, this is a scenario that the European model is really the only one picking up on. As of right now, we do have generally more confidence that there will be impacts over here in the south and the Atlantic coast of the United States. Not necessarily a stalling, but it is something we'll continue to monitor as of right now. All of this to say it's still there still is a good amount of uncertainty about what potentially is going to happen. Typically with tropical systems, you just have that cone forecast. Are they going to go along with what the cone said, or are they going to go outside of the cone? Typically two possible scenarios. Well, with this, I just named 4 possible scenarios. This is what can happen if you do have 2 tropical systems in the near vicinity of one another. There is a good degree of uncertainty. But what looks likely is maybe some increased rain chances, maybe some breezy conditions for central Georgia as we go into the beginning of next week. It will be very important to stay updated with over the course of this weekend as we get closer and closer to that time frame, which would be late Monday into early Tuesday, about potential impacts along the eastern coast of the United States and maybe even potentially in central Georgia. And also checking in with post-tropical Gabrielle, which continues to move over to the east at a very fast speed, 31 miles per hour. Still forecasted to continue to weaken, impact areas of Portugal, Spain, maybe even getting over into Morocco with just some tropical rain and some gusty winds, but Gabrielle continues to not be of concern. So now let's take a look, or that will do it for your weather impact extended weekend forecast, Thought I had one more graphic in there. Obviously a lot going on weather-wise. Like I said, continue to stay updated over the course of this weekend. But the good news is, at least for the next couple of days, your rain chances are looking a lot more isolated and a lot more scattered in nature. Hopefully going to be great for you to get some outdoor plans in and finally enjoy some of those slightly cooler temperatures. At least we are out of the 90s, not really holding on to that summer feel whatsoever anytime anymore. So we'll continue to fine-tune your forecast as we get closer to next week, but hopefully whatever is in the near vicinity of us in terms of tropical moisture, maybe some gusty winds, is going to be out of here as we transition into that first weekend of the fair, which will be October 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on Monday at 10:30.